Hey y'all, it's Lila with Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's only July, but I had to make a Halloween spooky season tumbler. Y'all know that in the crafting world, these seasons, they come up quick on us. So I wanted to get ahead of the game and show y'all some wonderful creations that I've been thinking about lately. So we're going to start off with this tumbler, which is absolutely adorable. Don't forget, like always, all of my materials that I'm using in this tumbler tutorial will be posted in my description below, including some direct links and some coupon codes for y'all to use. And don't forget, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for more tumbler and craft videos. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. I am using a 20-ounce stainless steel tumbler from Makerflow Crafts. I'm first going to prep this tumbler by sanding it. Today I'm using a 120 grit sanding block. I usually use between 100 grit and 180 grit sanding block. And then I'm wiping the tumbler down with 91% alcohol. Make sure you are wiping it down with at least 91% alcohol, or it's not going to get all that yuckiness off of the tumbler. Once I'm finished wiping it down with 91% alcohol, my plan is to spray paint this tumbler, so I'm going to take some painter's tape and just tape off the inside. If you have a certain material or device that allows you to do this, to skip this step, then go ahead and use that. And then I'm going to spray paint my tumbler. I'm choosing the colors black and white, and I have these two shades from Color Shot. It does not matter if you're using a matte and a gloss together, as you see I'm doing. If you use two glosses together, whatever colors you have on hand, use those. So I'm going to take this tumbler outside and then explain the spray paint process to y'all. So the easiest way to explain the spray paint process is to show y'all. So I do live in an apartment. I do not have a backyard. So this is my little spray paint station. So what I'm first doing is I'm going to spray paint the bottom, which is going to be the black color. And I'm taking that color up more than halfway to the top or from the tumbler. So you'll see that it's really not even. I'm really just focusing on getting a full cover tumbler at this point. And then I'm going to go in with my white. So after I get a nice even coat of my black, I'm going right in with my white spray paint. It's very humid, so I have to keep wiping my lens off. But now I'm going to go in with my white and just really take my time and try to get that full coverage. So again, I'm focusing on just adding the white on the tumbler, making sure that stainless steel is completely gone and it's only white. Using the white spray paint, you have to spray paint a little bit more than the black because it is a lighter color, so you have to put a little bit more layers on to make sure that you're getting a full covered area. So once I had both the black and the white spray paint on my tumbler, and I have an even coat, that's when I went in with my black again, and then I cleaned up that transition line between the black and the white. So if you see here that the transition line isn't as even, so this is when I'm going back and forth between the colors just to make sure that transition line is as even as I can make it. Remember that these are homemade crafts. They're not going to be perfect, but I'm trying to make it as perfect as I can, being a homemade craft, so just keep that in mind. And I stopped spray painting on my white color because I'd rather have my white overspray go to my black than my black overspray spray on my white area. When I was finished, I let this dry for about 30 minutes and then I removed the painter's tape from the inside of the tumbler before we moved on to epoxying the tumbler. So I was super excited for this tumbler, so I wanted some fast set epoxy. So the epoxy that I'm using is from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop, and this was one of the first times I used this epoxy, and your girl did not disappoint, okay? So if you guys don't have this epoxy, I highly recommend you guys going out, buying this epoxy, and at least giving it a try with the smallest size that she offers. So all I did was I mixed the epoxy together. I mixed about 15 mLs of epoxy total, so 7.5 part A and 7.5 part B, totaling 15 mLs epoxy. I just need a thin coat on this tumbler, just enough to seal in that spray paint before moving on to the next step. And I don't know why, but I decided to choose the two hardest colors to work with, black and white. So any tiny speck of glitter or dog hair just clung to this tumbler and it just stuck out like a sore thumb. So remember, these tumblers are created for y'all for inspiration. So if you guys want to use different colors, please feel free to use different colors. Whatever you make, I'm sure it's going to look beautiful. So with using the Fast Cure epoxy, this was dried to the touch in a couple of hours and it was cured in 4 hours. So after 4 hours, I moved on to the next step because I was so excited for this tumbler. So I'll see y'all for the next step of this tutorial. Now my tumbler is off the turner, the epoxy is cured. I'm going in with my X-Acto knife and I'm just cleaning up the rim of the tumbler and just removing any of that excess epoxy on the rim. I do this after every epoxy step just to make the final cleanup process a little easier. Once I was finished with this step, I'm now going to make my stripes. I'm personally using 1-inch painter's tape. If you don't have 1-inch painter's tape, you can always create your lines with vinyl. You can use masking tape and you can also use electrical tape. And I know a lot of these materials are found at the Dollar Tree or the $1.25 tree now, so you don't have to use the exact materials that I am using. So what I'm doing now is I'm placing 3 painter's tape or pieces of painter's tape on the tumbler, and then I'm going to remove the middle. So that's going to give me just kind of like a guideline, those 2 end pieces for the middle, and then I'm going to repeat that step around the tumbler. So you'll see I'm cutting off that excess tape, and then I'm going to remove that middle piece to make that line. I'm going to finish this around the entire tumbler, and keep in mind I did not measure this tumbler. I think it's like 7 or 8 inches diameter, but I'm not focusing on any measurements. Once I've placed all of these pieces of tape on the tumbler, I'm then going to just basically eyeball the tape and the stripes, and then you'll see that I'm moving around some pieces just to even out those stripes. And whenever it was finished, honestly, I don't think all of my tape pieces were straight, but they're straight enough for me, and I think it turned out fine. So again, remember, these are homemade crafts. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but if you are a perfectionist, then measure out your tumbler, measure out your pieces, or you can even make a template if it helps you. So after this step, this is when I get really like meticulous and like I start overthinking. The bottom of the tumbler, what I did was I just pulled those pieces to the bottom, and then I took my fabric scissors and then I cut pieces of the painter's tape. First, I tried to make like a weird design. It just wasn't working. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to cut it. So I cut the pieces just to make sure that those pieces didn't go on the bottom. And I just had a nice like, well, now it's black, but I'm going to spray paint this white. So at the very end, I just had a plain white bottom, which was fine with me. But if you want to make some type of design at the bottom, then do whatever you want to do. But I ended up adding some decals to the bottom. So it turned out really cute. After I had all of my tape on my tumbler, I went around my tumbler and I made sure to press around the tumbler where the tape was, especially where the edges of the tape were, just to make sure that tape was nice and firm on the tumbler. The next step, we are going to spray paint this tumbler. So you want to make sure that this tape is nice and stuck to the tumbler, so you have nice clean lines on your tumbler and you don't have to worry about spray paint going underneath that tape and creating like wonky lines. So I did touch this tumbler a lot, so I took my 91% alcohol and I wiped those areas where the bare areas were that the tape wasn't, just to make sure I removed any of those oils from my hands that may have been placed on the tumbler. And then once again, I am going in with more painter's tape just to tape off the inside so that excess spray paint won't go in the inside of my tumbler. Once I was done with this, I took my tumbler outside and then I'm going to show you the next spray paint process. So all I did was I took my black and I sprayed my black in the white areas, and then I sprayed my white in the black areas. So whenever I do my 2-color spray paint tumblers, I make sure to start with a darker color. I don't know why, even if it's on the top or the bottom, but I always start with the darker color and then I finish with the lighter color, because I always like the lighter color to overspray on the darker color than the darker color to overspray on the lighter color. So right now I'm just focusing on placing these colors on the tumbler, making sure that the bottom color is completely covered up. So I sprayed that black over the white, making sure that white area was covered up. And now I'm spraying that white over the black area, meeting up to the middle. And then you'll see me start cleaning up that line, which honestly right now the line isn't too bad, but I still have OCD and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to spray paint back and forth as you see. One tip that I have when working with spray paint and tumblers, you have spray paint that does a lot of overspray. If you're focused on spraying your tumbler at the bottom of your tumbler, that spray paint is going to spray out towards the center of your tumbler. So if you're trying to get that nice ombre effect, then you are going to have to spray towards the other end of the tumbler so that can meet at the top. So try not to spray in the middle of the tumbler, because if you spray in the middle of your tumbler with white, it's going to spray towards the top, if that makes sense. So you're working with a very small area. So I point my spray paint down and the downward direction and focus on the ends of the tumbler. So that way when it comes out, it sprays towards the middle. So I hope that makes sense. And you'll see in the video, I ran out of my white paint, so I had to replace it with some Rust-Oleum white paint. Right after I spray painted my tumbler, I went right inside. You'll see my spray paint is still wet and I'm going to remove all the tape. The reason why I remove my tape when the spray paint is still wet is because I want those nice crisp lines. Whenever you leave your spray paint to dry, sometimes whenever you remove your tape, the tape will peel up those lines in the spray paint and then you'll have a lot of like cracking and peeling. And like I said, I wanted my lines to be as crisp as I can make them. And you'll see there's some imperfections, but I think overall I did an okay job. What do you think? So I let that tumbler sit and dry for about 30 minutes total, and then now we're going on with the next coat of epoxy. Again, I mixed about 15 milliliters of epoxy, so that's 7.5 part A and 7.5 part B, totaling 15 mLs of epoxy. Again, I just want to add a coat of epoxy just to lock in this design and to make sure that when I add my decals, I'm not adding them to a bare spray painted tumbler. So if I do want to remove those decals, I don't have to worry about removing that paint. And I honestly don't think I even used the full 15 mLs of epoxy. I think I might have just used like 12 maybe, but I always like to mix more and have some left over than not have enough. So again, I let this tumbler spin for about 2 hours and then I let it dry or cure for another 2 hours. So the total drying or curing time for this was a total of 4 hours since I was using the fast cure epoxy again. I had this tumbler completely designed in like an entire day until the decals. It took me 2 days to really think of what I wanted on this tumbler. I just couldn't think of what I wanted. So eventually I just said, you know what, I'm just going to take a couple days, put it to the side, don't think about it. And then I eventually found out what I wanted to do on it. So my favorite saying in the Halloween time is spooky season. So of course I did a double offset for spooky season. So I created an offset in Cricut Design Space, and then with that offset, I created a thicker offset. So I have 3 colors I am using, and I chose the colors lime green, purple, and black. The font that I chose to add spooky season in is called Baby Cakes, and it was found on creativefabrica.com. I will have all of their links in my description below, and there's even like a coupon code for y'all to use if you guys do want to try them out for like a month. I think it's $1 or something. And then I just placed that spooky season on the tumbler. I was really contemplating to place it diagonal on the tumbler or straight because I didn't want to like have an unstraight decal on straight lines and really like trip up your eyes, but I think it did okay. So then I found all of these silhouettes on Cricut Design Space, all these Halloween silhouettes. So like bats, little stars, Halloween tree, silhouettes of cats. I think I found some spider webs, but they ended up to being like really hard to weed, so I just put those to the side. I made some circles, they didn't work out, so then I got like a crescent moon out of it and then a dot from that circle. So really just find whatever you want. Again, I found all of this on Cricut Design Space, and I made sure to make those little decals an inch or an inch smaller. So I wanted to make sure I put a decal in each stripe. So I didn't want them to overlap the stripes. So that was my specific plan. And I wanted to make sure I put the white decals on the black area and then the black decals on the white area. Once I was satisfied with my decals, I went in with my CC DIY urethane sealer. It's Quick Coat. I thought I recorded it, but I didn't. Again, it's from CC DIY. It's the Quick Coat and it's a urethane sealer. I added that around the entire tumbler where I placed the decals. And what this does is it allows these decals to stay on the tumbler. So when you epoxy your tumbler, you don't have to worry about lifting, and it takes about 25 minutes to fully dry. Again, I will have that listed in my description below, and I'll have the link for you so you can just click on the link and then see the product. Once my Quick Coat was dry, I then went in with 2 coats of my Fast Cure epoxy. So again, adding another 15 mLs total of epoxy to this tumbler. I let this cure for about 4 hours, and then I added my second coat. So I'd rather add 2 thin coats of epoxy than 1 thick coat epoxy. This allows you to have less bubbles, and it allows you not to have like that big bubble at the very end, just in case your tumbler isn't even. So like I said, I'd rather add my 2 thin coats of epoxy to really lock in that design. And then I made sure to let this cure for at least 1 day before I started using it. Yeah, I'm definitely keeping this. I'm not selling this tumbler, but I let it cure for at least 24 hours before I started to use it and started to wash it. And yeah, so this is it. Whenever I'm done applying my epoxy, what I do is I go in and I clean up the rim of the epoxy, or the rim of the tumbler again, to remove any of that excess epoxy. And then I lightly wash out the inside and outside of the tumbler with my Dawn dish soap, again very lightly, just to clean up the entire tumbler. And let me show you what it looks like at the very end. Okay, here it is. Isn't she adorable? Of course, this is not for sale. I have to keep this for myself. This is absolutely adorable. I cannot wait to see what you guys create with this. And if you guys are a fan of Halloween movies, when I created this before I added the decals, this reminded me of a certain Halloween movie that I can't say because I'm on YouTube, but if you say his name 3 times, he just might appear. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys did, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tumbler and craft videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.